not promote or promotion any illegal activities. All content provided by this channel is meant only for educational purpose only.
Cellmark, your chosen lab expert in the game. Tested the blood, telling the world the name.
Oh snap, here we are, we live.
Eddie O'Brien, they said with conviction, but the truth came out like a hidden addiction. DNA tested, but what did it show? Excluded my man in that courtroom flow. Not a maybe, not a doubt, they sealed the fate. How you sell that story when the evidence won't wait? Stabbings and chaos, the narrative spins, but the DNA's whispering, where do we begin? You're trying to pin the blame, but you're missing the mark. Eddie's outside, lit up, nothing but dark. Can't blame the dog when it wasn't even home. This ain't a fair fight. Eddie's been alone. But the night's truth waiting can't seal Eddie's fate. How do you even tell when facts slip away? We dance round the lies like the night turns to day. Lights dim down, jury on pause in the courtroom theater. I'm just a part of the cause. You're trying to pin the blame, but you're missing the mark. Eddie's outside, lit up, nothing but dark. Can't blame the dog when it wasn't even home. This ain't a fair fight. Eddie's been alone. Oh, chaos in the streets, but the truth won't die. You can try to twist the knife, but look me in the eye. Exclusions in the lab, but you still wanna shout. Did it run through your veins? What's this all about? You're trying to pin the blame, but you're missing the mark. Lit up, nothing but dark. Oh, can't blame the dog when it wasn't even home. This ain't a fair fight. Eddie's been alone. You believe in the shadow?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Late night whispers in a darkened room. Janet Donna's fate, sealed with impending doom. A house once safe, now a stage for dread. Struggled for her life, but its demons fed. Oh, shadows of deceit where truth gets lost. Innocence shattered at an unholy cost. Eddie in the frame, but the signs aren't clear. Blood on the walls, but something's amiss here. Something's amiss here. Dragged up and down, her cries fill the air. Stabbed 98 times, so much pain to bear. A bride sliced and torn, left in disarray. But tell me why is Eddie still in play? Witnesses watched, but the story's a mess. 5 to 7 minutes, can't nobody guess. Oh, shadows of deceit where truth gets lost. Innocence shattered at an unholy cost. Eddie in the frame, but the signs aren't clear. Blood on the walls, but something's amiss here. No, something's amiss here. No forced entry, he didn't have the keys, but Ortiz lurked and shadows crafted his schemes. Haunted her life with promises of pain. Days before her death, her fears were in vain. DNA whispered secrets that can't be denied. Fingerprints left untraced, trust misapplied. As items disappeared, paranoia grew. Janet's voice echoing, begging for truth. Oh, shadows of deceit where truth gets lost. Innocence shattered at an unholy cost. Eddie in the frame, but the signs aren't paid. For every unsung victim, justice must be made.
Oh, hello there.
Sorry, my asthma is killing me today.
Well, hello, man. How we doing? Oh, excuse me. Maybe I need a drink. Gatorade. What's up, everybody? How we doing? First and foremost, I want to say always, justice for Janet. Rest in peace to Janet Downing. We don't want Janet to be forgotten. Never that. But I think justice for Eddie is justice for Janet. But how we all doing today? What a great event we had. And if you couldn't make it, we understand why. Some people are not feeling great, but what a night it was, huh? What a great night, a night of unity, I believe, Eddie O'Brien, the fundraising event, over 100 supporters. And I think the first time out after 31 years, 100, having over 100 people. I mean, there was people coming and going, couldn't stay, came in, dropped a little something off. They had some great raffles. They had a bar, it was a nice, heartfelt fundraising event dedicated to raising awareness, trying to build support for Eddie, and pushing forward in this fight for justice. And I don't think it was just a fundraiser. I think it was a reminder of how deep Eddie's story resonates with people, inside Massachusetts, maybe from Rhode Island, beyond, in many, many states. It was nice meeting so many people, and I'll definitely get to that. Me and my family had a great time, but from the moment we got there, from the moment we walked through the doors, the energy was undeniable. Let me get that picture down. Absolutely, it was. It was just like being with family, and felt like that. I felt like that we were around people that we've known a long time. From meeting the O'Briens, from meeting, Mr. Ed O'Brien, Trish. Trish O'Brien came right up to me. I walked through the doors, gave me a big hug, and it was a great atmosphere. It was great meeting so many people. On Jerry, her husband came right up to me, shook my hand. What a nice guy, man. Their daughter, very nice, big supporter. Shout out to Courtney. But what a great turnout. And I think it only gets bigger from here. And hopefully we could stay out of the mud. Yes. Shout out to Teresa. Said, great night. I came alone and was welcomed with open arms. The O'Brien family is amazing, aren't they? They really are a truly nice family. And that tells you, they're like JoJo said, they're the epitome of family. I spent the day in Charlestown with JoJo. That was an experience. He took us down the pier. He said, I had a great place to go swimming. I'm thinking we're going to a beach. I mean, JoJo, you friggin' nut. I'm thinking we're going to a beach, right? He said, oh, no, there's these stairs. So I'm thinking, stairs that go all the way around, like kind of like, like so you can kind of walk into the water. Oh, absolutely. He was fun. Like, we spent the day with JoJo. We went to Kelly's Diner in Somerville. Shout out to Kelly's Diner. Great, great atmosphere. Good food. And I know everything's getting expensive. Everything, even for the little restaurants. So, I mean, when some people say, oh, maybe that was a little pricey. Oh, Kelly's Diner is getting pricey. But, you know what I said? You paid for the experience. And I think it was a great, great experience. Rode down Boston Street. Oh, yeah, but back to swimming. JoJo said, I got a great place to go swimming, man. This is classic JoJo, right? Classic Charlestown. Great place to go swimming. So he takes us down. There's a battleship on the other side. There's boats coming in and out, and he said, oh, yeah, you got the stairs. You walk down the stairs, jump in the water. Nice. We used to jump off the big cranes. So I'm thinking, all right, it's a little swimming hole. So we go there, and my daughter, is eager to jump in the water. She's thinking it's a beach. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with where we were, but there was like a battleship over there. You can see the Coast Guard boat, so my wife goes over there with a look, tells my daughter, you are not jumping in there. Miss Sarah jumped in. You can't even touch the bottom. This is where they used to bring the boats in and out and put the big anchors on the boats, It was right where the old anchor company is. And it was so cold because it was low tide. Like ice, cold water. I was like, my daughter wanted to jump. No. I thought it was a beach. You know what I mean? Shout out to JoJo, man. Great, great guy. Had a great, great time. The ice cream truck came by. Shout out to Kevin, the ice cream man. Hooked us all up with ice cream. It was a very good time, So I spent the day in Boston, and then we drove back to Rhode Island last night, But it was a good time, and I thank everybody for the hospitality, out there. I tried to let Adi know I was in Charlestown, But yeah, I don't know. He didn't respond. Maybe we could have jumped in the water together. Nah, he didn't respond. But I ended up picking up a very nice book while I was out there in Boston. I picked up the maybe you might have heard of it. It probably should be on the bestsellers list, right? I picked up Margot Nash's new book, The Politics of The Politics of Red Rum. YouTube kind of is getting, they don't like the way that we talk about the M word too much. And they said that's why we have not been getting, they have not been pushing the platform. So I appreciate it if you share it, if you hit the like button, all that stuff, hype it up. They don't like the words that we use, but check out Margot's book. Give me a second to get this stuff all, I'm not fancy like what's her name? Jess Machado, that actually has producers now. I mean, what's up with that? Congratulations, man. When you're big enough where you can have a producer, God bless. Yeah, but yeah, so I got to do everything myself. But no, it was great. People were sharing stories, connected with one another. Talking about why Eddie's case matters, and we're gonna watch We're gonna watch it. I dropped the ball big time. I was so nervous. I don't know. I was very nervous. I kind of had it all set up differently. I thought there was like maybe a podium with a microphone, and I actually pre-written a lot, but I seen all them people, and and all of a sudden I got like cold feet. Man, I was like, something feels wrong. I was like, come on, Mike, kick it in. You got this. Because I wanted to, I wanted to, the free Eddie O'Brien effort. I didn't want to hurt it. But no, it was very good on throughout the night. Yes, I did get to Boston Street. I didn't feel there was a need to take any pictures because everybody kind of already got out, took pictures. Plus, I was like almost running out of gas, so I had to get to the gas station as well. Yeah, but very very nice place. Like the O'Brien's home, the home that the O'Briens lived in. What a beautiful home! And the other thing about the homes on that street, the architecture was like outstanding. It reminded me, if I was gonna say any place in Providence that it reminds me of a lot of the houses, like the old houses on Broadway, you know, Broadway in Providence, some of the older Broad Street in Providence, them big, nice homes, with great, great woodwork, some of the homes on the east side. That's what Boston Street reminded me about. Yeah, shout out to Gina, man. Gina tells me I'm old school Somerville. Like I think Gina was gangsta back in the day. She said her husband, nice guy, but Gina was Somerville. Yes, trial run for the next. The next, I'm bringing my speaker, I'm bringing my microphone. We're going to bring it all. So, we're going to be on point. But I had problems early on getting a rental car. Like I said the other day, like I'm $1,000 deep on a rental car with deposits. When I rented the first car, I had to pay up front like it was like $300, right? So I paid that on my debit card, right? I don't have credit cards. It is what it is. I got a debit card. I got a bank card, so I paid. That was 300. I get all the way down to the airport, and they're like, "No, we don't rent to people without credit cards." And I was like, "For real? How do I get my money?" You got to deal with that. So all right, scratch that rental. So then I call around and I get a hold of Enterprise. They said, "Yeah, we have a car. We can give it to you from, Friday until Sunday afternoon, 300." Oh, okay. Plus a 300 security deposit. Really? So that's 700. The place is closed today. So actually, they was like, they can't accept cars returned on days they're not open. So now I have the car till tomorrow. So but that's a story about. And then the rental car ran like crap. Check engine light came on all the way up. I said, well, if I'm forced keeping it till tomorrow, I mean, so that's my rental car story. I know I'll get 300 back anyway, and I should get the other 268 back. So I'll get, hopefully I get it all back. But I gotta say, the hotel, man. Thanks to Mr. O'Brien. Great choice for hotel. We over at the Station Landing. We stayed at the Station Landing over in Medford. What a nice place. The hospitality was like very very nice. They had a nice breakfast. They had a real breakfast too. It wasn't like a lot of these hotels just put like donuts out there for you. What did they have, babe? Waffles and stuff? Yep.
Marbles, pancakes, pancake cereal, banana.
They had cereal, waffles and stuff, bananas, bagels. But it was a very nice place. It was the Fairfield Marriott. They had a fitness center, but no pool. But yeah, Margot's book. I've been skimming through Margot's book. We'll get to that. I actually have it right here. Oh shit. I got Margot's book right here. The yellow copy. Let me ask you, how many of you, when you first got the book, what was the first thing? I wonder how many people would be honest with this question. When you first got the book, right? What was the first thing you looked for? Those of you that have the first book, those of you that been around since the Eddie O'Brien story was, I'll say, born again, or started being talked about again, when JFK started talking about it. You looked right to the podcast, it took a minute to find it, because I was just curious how much was covered under them 38 episodes, and I always got a shout out. I wanted to explain so much to them last night. Right. And I had a whole thing that I was going to go through, but I just, off the top of my head, and I felt the pressure, but I basically had a nice script, you know? So I went to the addendum. But I'm so glad that there is another book, because I think it answers a lot of questions. Yeah, I think the podcast was in the addendum section, But the second edition, the addendum is written May 26th. Let's read it. It has been approximately 10 years since The Politics of Red Room was published. Much had happened over those years. Changes in the law, Eddie O'Brien's transfer to medium security at Northeast Correctional Center Institution at Gardner, Massachusetts, information received and investigated since the publication in 2016. These changes and developments seems to trickle in, with lengthy periods of inactivity in between. This is the reality of how slowly the justice system moves, especially, I hate that word, for inmates who are working on post-conviction appeals, requests for reversal, requests for new trials, and requests for clemency for their convictions. I ask myself whether the needle has moved at all in Eddie's case since the publication of The Politics of Red Room. Many days I think not. On other days I am amazed at how much information we have gathered since then, and how much further along the road to getting some relief from his wrongful convictions we are. Those are usually the days when I speak to Eddie on the phone. His patience and determination carried me through the times when the needle seemed stuck. He hasn't rested for a day during these last 10 years. Most of what I present in these new chapters is direct result of the arduous work and the endless hours Eddie has spent requesting and then combing through the often handwritten notes he received from his Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA request. Hundreds of documents we didn't have access to before were produced, exposing the shameful corruption and deliberate errors in the proceedings which have unjustly kept him in prison for the past 31 years. See, during COVID time, I think when Eddie put in for this information, a lot of places were running with skeleton crews. You know, so that was a great time. So he ended up getting all the information, which was good because it exposed a lot of BS, man. So much information was exposed. You know, and that's where he ended up getting Riley's notes. And we're going to go over Riley's notes a little at a time. We touched on them a few times. We had other help as well. Many readers are familiar with Karen Reed, who was charged with the murder of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The retrial was held in a Superior Court for Norfolk County 2025. The first trial ended in a hung jury, which I don't know how. I mean, that trial should have never had a second trial. Does everybody who here thinks Karen Reed was guilty? Anybody? Anybody think Karen Reed was guilty of what she did to John O'Keefe? During those two trials, unimaginable prosecutorial misconduct and police corruption were exposed on national television. Similar political collusion and corruption I wrote about 10 years ago was playing out live on television daily, and viewers were witnessing it to it. Such corruption suddenly didn't seem as far-fetched as it had in 2015. Joe. I was telling him that the swimming, that beach that you were taking us to go swimming, and them crazy ass stairs. I said I thought it was like, you know, long stairs, or you sit down like a beach, put your feet in. These guys jumping off a pier. Shout out to JoJo though. I told him that I had such a great time yesterday, you know, down in Charlestown. You know, met Kevin the ice cream man. Uncle Mitch. Guy said, "Oh my God, you hurt my hand, your grip." I said, "Oh my God." I guess that JoJo's cousin, you know. But yep, hung out down in Charlestown yesterday. John O'Keefe was not hit by a vehicle. I was floored when we finally saw the X-rays. No way he was hit by the car. And I said that right away because I was like, this guy would have chest injuries, would have thigh injuries. His thighs would be bruised. You know, so yeah, so you know, and I don't think that they'll ever. People ask me, do you think John O'Keefe will ever get justice? No, no, unless somebody confesses. You know, but John O'Keefe will never get justice. You know, unless there's some kind of confession and someone finally comes forward and speaks out. No, I said that we had a good time down in Charlestown yesterday. The stairs were a little shaky, you know, but we had a great time. Go back when you're done and listen to the beginning. I explained, you know. But yeah, we had a great time down in Charlestown, you know. Um, Absolutely, you know. We met Kevin the ice cream man, you know, cousin Mitch, you know. We had a great time. Good breakfast over at Kelly's. I went over all of that, you know. Oh, I bet that's how you grew up. I'm sure, man. Like, yo, that I know, but wasn't gonna let my daughter do it. But no, it was a great time. Yeah, $5 cups of coffee. I know it. I went over all of that, you know. No, my wife wasn't letting my daughter jump in there. Never. And I'll cover it real quick. Like, we had someone take pictures of my daughter down the pier, and they've been kind of sharing them all over online, saying unpleasant things. You know what I mean? And I think it's some people just hating. You know what I mean? Getting blowback. But very nice day. Very nice day. Jojo said, "Park there." I said, "No, it's a big handicap spot. It's okay. Everybody does it. I'm not parking there." He said, "It's okay. Don't want nobody comes down here." I said, "I can't do it." But let's get back to the addendum of this book, man. Yeah, it's only another page. But another person accused of Red Rum was forced through a life-altering ordeal that robbed her of her liberty, her reputation, her job, cost her millions of dollars to defend herself. Before the second trial began, she already owed $5 million in deferred legal fees to her lawyers. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has such enormous financial and personal resources that the scales of justice are always tipped in its favor. And that's the friggin' truth. Think about it. These commonwealths and these states have so much money that if they want you, they're gonna get you. It don't matter where it is, if they want you, if they want to put you in prison, if they want you bad enough, absolutely, bro, absolutely. And I explained that, like, that's what you're gonna get. People are gonna do horrible things like that. It's a different world now. It really is. It's a different world. But the scales of justice are so tipped because if they want to get you, if they want to jam you up, you're right, not all people. Praise that. You know? Yeah, we had a great time, bro. Great time. But the scales of justice are so tipped. The amount of money that they have, and I'm sure Jojo can tell you, if they want to jam you up, if they want you locked up, there ain't no money that you can do, that can save your ass. Margot said something in the beginning, I think, of her other book. She said, "I couldn't save Eddie. The judge couldn't save Eddie. The law couldn't save Eddie. It was too powerful. You went up against a machine." And that's why I think we need to build this Eddie O'Brien shit, and people say, "Oh, why you always talk about Eddie O'Brien?" Because you know what? I think it's that important. And if you're sick of listening, then don't listen. Change the channel. You know what I mean? Because it's that important to me. You have a man that's been locked up for 31 years when there's no DNA. The blood paperwork actually points to a member of Janet Downing's family. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Now, we had some great times, man. Jojo said, "Not bad for a moment's notice." Yeah, and I called him up in the morning. I was like, "Yo, I'm on my way. Where are you? Give me your address. We're going out for breakfast." Went over there, scooped him up, and we spent the day together. He says, "Awesome family. Wife and daughter are awesome and funny and adorable." Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it was a very good day. So where was I? That the scales of justice are always tipped in its favor, no matter that the defendant has the presumption of innocence. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I'm very well behaved. Oh my God, you got to know me. You know, when I have to be. And I have a great wife. Absolutely, man. That's number one. You know, she has held me down. If they cannot pay eye-watering amounts of money for a team of defense attorneys, the best forensic experts, and the best scientific labs, then the fight is as lopsided as David is Goliath. I'll take a $1 million defense over the presumption of innocence any day. That is such a strong friggin' statement right there. Money over the law is what Margot is saying. If you have money, that's the only way you're going to win, or you're going to have a chance to win. And that is your justice system, ladies and gentlemen. That is your justice system. You know what I mean? Yo, not for nothing, but we got to, we got to clap it up for your justice system. You know what I mean? Because they're own citizens. If you don't have money, they'll lock your ass up, throw you in jail. Back years ago, they came out with, after the slavery thing, and they said, like, we abolished slavery. They didn't like get rid of slavery. They amended slavery. You know what I mean? You're 3/5 of a man. But when they ended slavery, I think they had a totally different plan. It was like, we cannot have any slaves. It's residual, So, we'll put them in prison. So they came up with more laws, and amongst them laws, they came up with a vagrant law that says, like, if you don't have more than $135, we can kind of claim your properties and put you in prison. And that's what they started doing. They started, you know what? You're broke. You're broke. We're locking you up. You're a vagrant. And they would put you in, they would lock your ass up. So, I mean, I'll definitely take a $1 million defense over a presumption of innocence any day. But by the time Karen Reed got to trial, she had lost that presumption in the press, just as Eddie had. The presumption isn't going to win the case if the defendant cannot access funds for investigators, forensic analysis, several lawyers, and expert witnesses needed properly to defend the case. Most people with a red room charge, they don't have all that. They don't have all them investigators. They don't have the Alan Jacksons. They don't have the David Yanettis. They don't have the doctor lady. They don't have the dog expert. They don't have a lot of that. They don't have friggin' 33 interns. How many interns did Karen Reed have? They don't have all that. Eddie didn't have all that. But as soon as I'm done reading this addendum, we're going to get into the fundraising event. They don't have several lawyers, expert witnesses needed to defend a case. They don't have funds to hire the small army that's necessary. At least the defendant has a fighting chance. The presumption of innocence cannot fight the blue coat of silence. of the police or collusion among the many state officers that participated in Karen Reed's prosecution, or should I say persecution. What we all saw in that courtroom of Karen Reed, and what most people could not see in a 15-year-old Eddie O'Brien's courtroom, none of us was ready for that in 1995. Scores of bloggers, podcasters championed Karen Reed's cause and supported her with fundraisers and marches. There was an entire subculture of groups in the innocent, wrongful conviction and police anti-corruption world that joined forces and raised the consciousness of the public to the point where the debacle that was unfolding was undeniable. Without such overwhelming support, I doubt Karen Reed would have prevailed. Would have Karen Reed prevailed without all this public support, even if she did have Alan Jackson? Good question. One of those podcasters turned its attention to Eddie O'Brien's case. When the Karen Reed trial was over, that is when the landscape changed for Eddie. We were introduced to a large community of people who understood what had happened to him. It started with one woman in that community posting a photo of the politics of Red Rum on the Facebook with comments, "If you thought the Karen Reed case was corrupt, you've got to read this book." And I believe that was Sherry, if I'm not mistaken. But a podcaster picked that up and began researching the case. They live streamed 38 episodes of their show about the Eddie O'Brien case. A wealth of new information came out of those sessions. Oh boy, did it, man. You know, we're introduced to Adi Ortiz, so many, a lot of great interviews. Boy, a lot of lies came out of that about our friend Adi, boy. The information alone informed investigators into other possible suspects. On a personal note, I was finally able to accept in my own legally trained mind that the collusion and corruption went even further than just incompetence, with a smattering of okay. I now firmly believe that this was a coordinated and carefully executed plan to convict an innocent young, please turn page, boy for a horrible Red Rum in the sole purpose of advancing personal and political agendas. I also believe that the police and prosecutors knew Eddie had not brutally killed Janet Downing. They intentionally refused to look at any evidence that pointed to any possible suspect. They intentionally withheld exculpatory evidence critical to Eddie's claim of innocence, and they fabricated incriminating evidence to convict him. In this addendum, The Politics of Murder, I'm going to show you how. I think that everybody should go get this book. That begins the second, the 10 new chapters, and then it goes right into the current status of the juvenile law. And I'm actually interested in that, and how it was before that, but yeah, but we're gonna give me a minute to get set up. We're gonna watch the fundraiser event. We're gonna react to it, see how it came out. I know I had it up here somehow, but give me a minute, and I'm gonna get that up for you. But yeah. Don't go nowhere. Let's recap this fundraiser.
Square one was a stage, the scripts were all signed. Before the first siren, before the yellow line, a kid from the corner, a town in a cage. They traded his youth for the front page rage. 30 long years in a shadow-bound cell, for a story they manufactured to sell. But ink starts to fade and the truth starts to bleed when power and ambition are all that they need. This is Eddie's truth, rising from the floor, knocking like thunder at the courthouse door. You can bury the facts, you can script out the youth, but you can't lock away Eddie's truth. Yeah, the silence is breaking, the walls have to fall. Eddie's truth is gonna outlive them all. They talked about justice, but looked at the polls, trading a life for their political goals. Nash wrote the pages, the web spread the light, exposing the ghosts that were manufactured that night. The Somerville streets know the weight of the lie, how a gavel can swing while the innocent cry. But July brings the motion, the Rule 35, to strip all the grease from a rigged up trial. This is Eddie's truth, rising from the floor, knocking like thunder at the courthouse door. You can bury the facts, you can script out the youth, but you can't lock away Eddie's truth. Yeah, the silence is breaking, the walls have to fall. Eddie's truth is gonna outlive them all. 30 years of waiting for the scales to dip right. 30 years of turning the dark into light. It's more than emotion on legal pad sheets. It's a declaration to the Somerville streets. Just a boy from Somerville, caught in the storm, innocence shattered in a world so torn. They said it was fear, reopening the doors, filled with whispers behind closed floors. A white boy convicted made it look fair, but in the shadow of justice, the truth laid bare. Eddie was a name, but just a pawn in the game, sacrificed and railroaded. Nothing felt the same. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. Barnum was PA showboating, just trying to amass. The system wanted justice, but justice was blind, changing the laws, leaving truth far behind. Remove the judge who dared to be just. Eddie was demonized in the world's cruel thrust. Size mattered not when politics run deep. From day one he fought, but all they did was sweep. Oh, just a boy from Somerville, they played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. And though
Okay, let's get into this this event. You know, it was a good night.
As are all of you. Can you guys hear me in the back? I can't whistle. That's the only problem. All right. All right. Come on in. You guys might want to sit down because we're gonna watch something. So you want to? Okay.
I appreciate that, Miss White.
All right, guys. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming
we
tonight.
can't give them
No
people
matter how
no
far
ear.
or
You
near
just
you
block them
are.
away.
We are all here for the same reason, and that is to right a wrong that has gone on for far too long. So welcome to A Night for Justice, free Eddie O'Brien. Tonight, we're gonna watch something extremely special. This is our friend Rob here. Rob Marshall, please welcome him. Thank you. Thank you very much. Rob is currently working on a documentary, The Commonwealth versus Eddie O'Brien. It is in production. We are going to have the live premiere of the sizzle reel of it, which I'm told is a taste of the documentary. Rob has been a long time television and film producer, most famed for I Got Bombed at Harvey's, which is a real full-length featured documentary about a casino bombing in Tahoe that was shown at South by Southwest. And if you guys know, it's pretty hard to get a film in that. So yeah, that's pretty prestigious. And maybe this will be the next one, right?
I hope.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so anyways, I'm Rob Marshall. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hello.
Like she said, this is the sizzle reel for the project I'm working on now. Basically, it's long. It's about 10 minutes long. It is a taste of what I hope the documentary will be. We have shot parts of it. We have not shot other parts. You'll notice throughout that there's like watermarks on it, and like the music is not licensed and that sort of thing. That's because we don't have a lot of money. So we are currently in the process of trying to raise funds to get this thing made, to bring it to Netflix, HBO, those types of distribution places, and hopefully get it on there and hopefully get the story told. As Karen said, I did a documentary that I started years ago, but it premiered at South by Southwest this spring and now is starting to air internationally, and hopefully we're gonna get some US distribution rights at some point here in the near future. And I hope to do the same with this. I will say that it is it's for adult audiences. There are some graphic moments in it, and if you are, sensitive to that sort of thing, you might just want to be aware. I would recommend, if there's children here, maybe stepping out, at least for the first few minutes when sort of the circumstances are described. But yeah, with that, without saying too much more, I will play it. It's about 10 minutes long. You'll see it sort of tells the story and gives a taste of what I hope this project will eventually look like.
Thank you.
So for anyone that didn't have the chance to see, you know, parts of it, this is what it was.
We're just a regular family from Somerville, but we ran up against the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Tom Riley, and a district attorney's office who has millions of dollars at his disposal, hundreds of people that work for him, and we're just one family. So Ed never stood a chance.
Now, live, this is WBZ News 4. It's a mystery in Somerville tonight. Who would kill a mother of four in her own home?
Janet was sweet. She genuinely had a serenity about her that people felt.
Janet Downing was stabbed more than 90 times in her Somerville home.
She was found about 10 o'clock last night. A trail of blood led to the basement, out a door, and down the side street.
No weapon was found, but police are confident an arrest will be made.
Of all the cases I've ever been involved with, I've never seen a district attorney zero in with so little evidence on a suspect that quickly.
We have information and witnesses that saw him in the rear area of our house shortly after the murder.
By 10 o'clock that night, the district attorney had only one suspect in his sights. Eddie O'Brien, altar boy, and a grandson of the city's former police chief, lived across the street from the Downings. He became a suspect after police doubted his story that he had been mugged the same night as the murder.
O'Brien admitted he found Janet Downing's bloody body, and he added he saw someone else in the house, but he didn't report it for an hour.
No rational human being is going to believe that a 15-year-old kid saw his best friend's mother murdered and 10 minutes later got mugged and cut with a knife.
But some of the Downing family members have claimed he was obsessed with Janet Downing and may have stalked her.
Edward O'Brien was watching Janet Downing, 43-year-old mother of his best friend, dressed.
I think she's on my age, but I don't think she's in her 40s. I was 17, 15, actually. I was looking for teenage girls if I was in an impression.
Now he's held without bail as a judge decides whether to try him as an adult.
I believe that once you've stepped over the line and you've taken the life of another, you should answer for that as an adult. You're no longer a juvenile delinquent at that point.
The case brought about a change in Massachusetts law. Teens now accused with murder will automatically be tried as adults.
The legislation that was signed, which was known as the Eddie O'Brien law, was that no juvenile over the age of 14 could be tried as a juvenile for murder. They all had to be tried as adults. Eddie was going to adult court. No doubt about it. O'Brien has always maintained his innocence.
Said former Middlesex DA Tom Riley framed him for political reasons.
But in 1997, a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Judge Ponero will say that the defendant, Edward S. O'Brien, is guilty of the offensive charge, which is murder in the first degree, and should be punished by defined in the Massachusetts Correctional Institution for a term of life.
I was absolutely sick to my stomach.
Sitting at the sport is now adjourned.
I couldn't fathom it. He was such a young boy going to an adult prison. I felt like I completely let Eddie down. I've been retired for 13 years. I still think about it all the time. I was appointed to be Eddie's guardian ad litem during the trial. I've worked on hundreds of cases with kids in really difficult situations, and none have affected me the way this case did.
30 kids.
The first time I was walking in to meet Eddie, I was very aware that I was walking into a room with somebody who might have killed a woman my age. Once I met him, I quickly realized he was a very young 15. But for the district attorney, he was a perfect target. Riley was looking for the perfect case that would help him reshape the law and ignite his campaign for attorney general, because this was all taking place in a racially charged atmosphere in Boston at the time. So he couldn't go after an African-American kid. It had to be a white kid.
You see the image that you're
Yes.
being asked by the image with Catholic board, but here's bloody fingerprints were found inside that front door.
Knowing what I know now, I have no problem saying that I believe that the blood was planned.
We obtained over 1,000 pages from Tom Riley's in his personal notes during the trial, and I went through everything. That was freaking Riley's handwritten notes there. You might consult the note, like find dirt and blow it out of proportion.
We've
Yeah.
learned more in the past 2 years of the corruption in the Middlesex District Attorney's Office than we did in the past 28 years before that.
There's DNA evidence under Janet Downing's fingernails that excluded Eddie and included unknown male DNA. They have never tried to match that DNA profile to any male.
You see the first column where it says 10, 11, and 12?
Yeah.
I'm not 10, and Janet Downing's not 10 in that column.
So who's number 10?
Exactly. But the thing on it, they didn't report it, so they hid the result.
Right, Ed.
There are several other people with opportunity and motivation who should have been considered suspects, but they were never considered. It's got to be in here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be in this. After I wrote the book, a private investigator reached out to me to tell me that he had been investigating a suspect in another case back at the time of the murder, who it turns out that he was dating Janet Downing's daughter. And he had over 100 letters addressed to Janet Downing on his computer saying Janet wouldn't let me date her daughter. She needed to die. He thought she had essentially ruined his life by taking his girlfriend away. It's never really been investigated. There are a lot of people who should have been investigated during the course of this. Certainly, I believe Artie Ortiz, who lived at that house and left under suspicious circumstances. Janet had caught him dealing drugs out of her house, and she thrown him out for that.
Gina Mahoney put this big lie out there about me that I got thrown out of the house and that I was a big cocaine drug dealer or something, drugs out of Gina's basement and all this kind of stuff.
Look at this mutt. Look at this mutt. Yeah, big shout out to Margot Nash. You know, I hope everyone purchased her book at the fundraising event. You know, and everyone that purchased the book got a book signed. Look at this mutt. The inconsistencies of Artie Ortiz go on and on and on. You know, Riley refused to test the DNA of Artie, of Paul, Ryan, of Big Paul. And doesn't somebody have Martin's DNA, actually? I think that's sitting in someone's freezer, if I remember correctly. But man, this guy, he just...
It's all totally false. Entire name, work.
Regina Mahoney.
She mentioned to you or discussed with you Arthur Ortiz during that year. Steve. Field second.
The jury never heard what Janet was afraid of.
Afraid of her ex-husband.
Just before they brought her out, Addie came across the streets. He started to pat himself. Oh, I said, I can't find my keys. Oh, my keys are over there. He's like, where? I'm screwed. I gotta find those keys. And like, at that point, the cops were stringing like the tape around. He started to run onto the lawn. And the cop said, hey, no, out.
So for what? They always get keys in the floor. It's a your key. I have no clue where.
Was that Ari holding the kid? Who is that?
Out.
So for what? They always get keys in the floor.
What happened? Did we just blow a fuse? The air conditioner went out. All right, because the microwave was on, I think, in the AC.
It's a your key. I have no clue where that key ended up.
It didn't dawn on me at that moment to say, well, how did you?
Hi, baby. Hi, Zena.
Dealing drugs out of her house. And she'd thrown him out for that.
Gina Mahoney put this big lie out there about me. That I got thrown out of the house and that I was a big cocaine drug dealer or something, drugs out of Gina's basement and all this kind of stuff. It's all totally false. Entire name, work.
All right.
Gina Mahoney.
She mentioned to you or discussed with you Arthur Ortiz during that year. Steve. Field second.
The jury never heard what Janet was afraid of.
Afraid of her ex-husband.
Just before they brought her out, Addie came across the streets. He started to pat himself. Oh, I said, I can't find my keys. Oh, my keys are over there. He's like, where? I'm screwed. I gotta find those keys. And like, at that point, the cops were stringing like the tape around. He started to run onto the lawn. And the cop said, hey, no, out.
Look at Ari Ortiz in 1995. He looks as slimy then as he does now. You couldn't get a babysitter? That's a sympathy thing. Oh, let's go to Clover. We're going to bring my little son to make it look like I'm an upstanding father. You know, but there's always that one witness, right? There's always that one guy, right? And in the Eddie O'Brien case, right, that witness is you know what I mean? I don't even like saying the creep's name. I don't even like giving him any oxygen. But he is a name that keeps resurfacing because the story keeps changing. But take care of your health, Adi, please. We're going to need you soon. It's not evolving. The story's not, it's not changing. And I think he knows the shit's getting deep. And when a story, well, he wouldn't even go on friggin' JFK show for $3,000 he turned down for 15 minutes. That, my friends, is what is consciousness of guilt. You know, the justice system has an obligation to stop, to rewind, and ask the only questions that matter in this Eddie O'Brien case, right? How much weight should a conviction carry when one of his pillars can't stand still? You know what I mean? Like, when Ortiz's statements over the years have changed like a friggin' radio station, right? That you can't quite tune in. Different versions, you know, friggin' different details. In a case like this, right, where the timeline is already fragile, the physical evidence is already contested, right? And the defendant was a child, a witness whose story keeps changing isn't the problem. It's just a failure from the top to the bottom.
They always get keys.
Well, that was Adi Ortiz. Look at him. He looks like the type that would have yoked up a kid from behind. He looks like the type. Yeah, Adi, man, come on. And you got rid of all of that hair. When the accused is a kid, 15 years old, the system is supposed to slow down and check it, double check it, triple check it, right? But instead, nope. They leaned on the testimony that shows cracks. Big cracks. Big ass cracks. Enough to drive a police cruiser through them ass cracks. When people like Adi contradict themselves repeatedly, the question isn't why. The question is, why did the system allow that kind of shit? And I think what Rob's work exposed, I think this project doesn't need to sensationalize anything. The inconsistencies speak for themselves. The different statements, the pressure cooker environment of the investigation. You know, JFK spun this guy out. I got to give it to him. And he got this guy to really come out with a lot of information. You know, so I got to give it to them guys over there. They spun Adi out. And Adi, you know, the cat here. Oh, it wasn't a cat. It was a dog. It wasn't a dog. It was a friggin' cat litter box. It wasn't a cat litter. What was it, man? It was so many, many, many lies. And recently, he was asked, you know, in a chat. Let me actually go back and see if I have the email. He was asked in a chat about the DNA. No, that one ain't it, but that one's a very nice email. I like that one. He was asked about if the DNA wasn't. Yeah, I think this is it. Come on. Let me see. He was asked, who else was there that night? And then he said, no clue. I'm not a cop. It's not my job to figure it out. Wait a minute. Adi, you should have. I thought it was like you were so convinced it was Eddie. So if you have no clue who else, now remember the question, who else was there that night, Adi? Who else? He didn't say, I don't know, I wasn't there. He didn't say, oh, Eddie was there. What are you talking? It was Eddie. It was Eddie. Eddie did it, you know. Eddie. And then he said he never told J Bro that I was in the house. And then the harbor asked Adi, right? How do we write this then? You know, how do we make this right? And it was interesting because I thought Adi would have came back and said, you know, what do you mean make it right? It is right. You know, how do we write this then, Adi? How do we correct this? Then he would ask, if science shows DNA doesn't match Eddie, if science shows DNA doesn't match Eddie, don't you want the real killer taken care of? And you know what this guy said, which kind of blew my mind. This wasn't that long ago. This was, I mean, the Harbor Lounge hasn't been around too long. So this was probably after the Harbor Lounge's first or second show. So this was within the last month. You know, this was within the last month. And they said, you know, if science shows the DNA don't match Eddie, don't you want the real killer taken care of? And Adi said something like, oh, yeah, of course I do. But Adi, you've been saying, oh, it's Eddie. So wouldn't have you said, what are you talking about? The real killer is taken care of. He would have said some shit like that. You know what I mean? He would have said something like that. Like, what are you talking about? The real killer was taken care of. Adi, stop it. Yes, here you go. Yes, I do. Look. Yes, I do. And then after that, everybody's confused, Adi. Everybody's confused now because for so long you had that narrative that what are you talking about? The real killer is taken care of. And now all of a sudden, if the science shows DNA doesn't match Eddie, don't you want the real killer taken care of? And Adi replies, yes, I do. What else can you say? Is that another inconsistency of Mr. Adi Ortiz? Is that another inconsistency of Adi Ortiz? His answer should have been, what are you talking about? You got the real guy. You know what I mean? You got the real guy. Wait a minute, Adi. All I gotta say is you're actually a lucky man, Adi. You know, like you really are. You are very, very lucky, man. You know? You know, you really are, man. You know, yeah, you can't keep track of it. He needs to just shut his mouth. That's the best thing he can do. Is just like shh. You know what I mean? The best thing he could do is just be quiet. Let's get back to this guy. Look at this. You know what? I gotta I need this image, man. We need to save that. We need to put that. We're gonna take care of that picture, man. We're gonna enhance it a little bit. Oh, it always comes out in the wash.
Well, I have no clue where that key ended up.
It didn't dawn on me at that moment to say, well, how did your keys get lost? Unless he was in there. Janet had told me the day she was murdered, it can be really scary. If anything happens to me, I'm sure they investigate. None of these things came out in court. None of them.
Huh, babe? And look at our lovely Miss Regina. Regina is old school Charlestown. Regina said she was watching Alcatraz on her couch. She jumped off her couch like, holy shit. She said, I'm fed up with this. And she marched over to Janet's house because she seen the rescue. And right away, she said she thought Carrie Ann was being a problem. She was like, this bitch. I'm going to take care of her once and for all. I'm sick of her effing around with Janet. So old school Somerville. Regina gets up, marches over there. All hype, just watched Alcatraz. I could see Gina marching over there. You know what? I'm done with this. After all the shit that she heard on the porch that morning, everything that Janet Downing was going through, Gina said, hell no, I'm done, man. My old school Somerville ass is going to go over there. Me and Carrie Ann going to have a talk. Oh, did I mention that? Speaking of Carrie Ann was in the police reports on the anniversary the other night of her July 23rd. And I believe there was some kind of, there was an arrest made. There was a charged. Yeah, she was all hyped up on Alcatraz. All hyped up. Shout out to Regina. Help out. Listen, we got 60 people in here. You know, why don't you give some memberships and give some of them people a nice membership to enjoy? You know, really appreciate that. Yep, 60 people. But let's get back into this.
If I was on that jury with what was presented, I probably would have said, don't go through.
Was that Regina?
Probably would have said, if I was on that jury.
Is that Regina back in 1995? That's so is that Gina back in 1995?
I'm sure they investigate. None of these things came out in court. None of them.
Absolutely. Eddie, is this? Yes, that's Regina. Wow, look at Regina back in 1995. I can see her marching across the street. She said, I'm old school Somerville. We would definitely be there to show support. Big Ed said, in the end, we need many, many people once a judge is seated to come to court and support Eddie. But the most important situation is what Judge Eddie ends up with. Mr. O'Brien, there's a question. I keep researching that. What will determine the judge in this situation? Good question. Could it fall on politics? But people are going to be there, Big Ed. People are going to show up and show out. You know, let's keep our fingers crossed that Eddie gets a great, great judge. And that's what is important in this situation, you know? But yo, I'm amazed. Look at Regina. You know what I mean? Shout out to her back in 1995. Look at you, girl.
If I was on that jury with what was presented, I probably would have said guilty too.
He belongs to jail for his life. It stinks.
There is so much evidence in this case that has not been examined. There's no blood on his white t-shirt. There's a palm print in Janet's blood, and it's not Eddie's.
People deserve to die for.
So whose palm print is it if it's not Eddie? See, that's another thing, the palm print. The way Ortiz's narrative was treated as gospel, even when the shit didn't even match. I mean, I'm not surprised who it was. At 8:30, Paul, what happened? Because now a witness who changes their story over and over isn't just unreliable, right? They're dangerous. And that's what they're saying about you, Adi. You're dangerous. You're a dangerous person. We heard about it in the projects. We heard about your wife, Carol, screaming out what you did to her sister. We heard about all that. Judges relied on this shit to make a life-altering decision. Heffernan's on the case. They kick his ass off. But when the story shifts, the verdict should have been re-examined. Not out of sympathy, right? Because of legal, you know, because it's black and white law. And if you look at all the inconsistencies in friggin' Adi's statements, that shit ain't a footnote. It's a year of Eddie's life. A year he spent growing up in prison. A year fighting just for someone to listen to him. Watching this shit about him shift while he stayed stuck between a rock and a hard place. And when the testimony started to change, the consequences didn't fall on the witness. They fell on Eddie. And Eddie carried this shit for 3 decades. You know, when this ain't about attacking, you know, a scumbag like Ortiz, you know, because it ain't worth attacking someone that's even less than a person. About acknowledging somebody who's unreliable, even in his own life. Adi Ortiz has shown his whole life he's been nothing but unreliable. And in this case that shaped the child's entire future, he was unreliable there as well. Accountability, Adi, doesn't mean punishment. It means honesty. And your story changed over and over. And the justice system should confront that reality. Don't bury it. Because it ain't about what happened in 1995. It's about what we do with the truth today in 2026.
That's my brother, number 12.
Oh, it is my fight.
Look at that smile, man. You know, I think this case is a reminder, right? That justice is just not a one-time event. You know, we have an ongoing responsibility for this boy right here. And I call him a boy because he is a boy. He's a man, but he's a boy. You know what I mean? Like, he was taken from his parents as a boy. And yes, I will continue to do these streams, you know, because I think this message is so important. And I think that what Rob Marshall is doing, his doc is pushing the conversation towards the light. And the community is paying attention. The O'Briens can walk around with their heads high, man. And I'm happy. This case is kind of, it hit me right in the heart, man. It hit me right in the chest, you know. I'm emotionally connected to this case because I think in the end of the day, I don't think it's about who speaks the loudest, what content creator carries the show. I mean, it's all about getting to the point about freeing Eddie. And we shouldn't be hating one another in the process of it. It's not about whose story stands up when the facts stop moving. It's about there was an injustice done. There was an injustice done. And what are we going to do about it?
None of Eddie's DNA was found anywhere on Janet's body. There is DNA under Janet's fingernails and on the hilt of the knife, which does not belong to Eddie and has never been identified. There are other suspects that should have been looked at and were never investigated. This whole case is as unbelievable as seeing your best friend's mother murdered and then getting mugged 10 minutes later.
So wrong. So wrong.
The Commonwealth versus Eddie O'Brien. And that's what it was. It was the Commonwealth. But with the story, when it keeps changing, right? The problem in the Eddie O'Brien case, let's keep it real, right? The story in this case, in every major case, there's always that one voice the system decides to trust. And it's not because the story is perfect, right? It's not because the details, shit's lining up. But because the system needs a narrative, right? It needs a storyteller. It needs something that's fast. It needs something that's clean. It needs something that's friggin' convenient. Does Eddie have a favorite sports team? Does anyone still talk to Carol? Carol is a ghost. Patriots, of course. Come on now. Eddie is New England to the core. You know, don't go nowhere because up next, you know, I'm about to get up there and get white as a ghost and get all shivering and nervous and drop the ball and I had to take out my phone and you know, and people say, "Oh, don't worry about it. You did a good job," but I don't know. I guess I'm my toughest critic, but
So wrong.
Yeah, so I think as you can tell, I imagine most of you, if not all of you, are as familiar, if not more familiar with the story than I am. We're hitting on a lot of broad, big points, not every single point. I know that there's a lot that's not in here that should be in here, could be in here, all that. This is for an audience of people of movie producers, network executives, that sort of thing, to gain their interest, to basically say something happened here, right? Like this is not the story.
It doesn't smell right.
This is not the story that
Don't smell right.
you've been told, you know?
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do with this. And you know, there's just so much, this is 10 and a half minutes long. It's probably 7.5 minutes too long for what I need it to be. And they're still missing big chunks of it. Yeah. So, that's, this is what we're working on now. If Eddie has told you about the documentary that he's working with someone on, that's me. And this is what we've been doing. And we've got some good leads. I'm very hopeful. I felt this way about my last project, and it ended up going, and it ended up, becoming something.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
So I hope.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
No, thank you. We're gonna open up to a Q&A. Rob has agreed to answer any questions that, if anybody's burning questions.
In the meantime, I can tell you, I got into this because I grew up in Medford. I grew up in West Medford.
Oh, okay.
By St. Ray's. I was saying to Karen, like, you go a mile and a half that way, that's my house. You go a mile and a half that way, that's Eddie's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
My buddy Dave was here with me. He and I went to high school with John Fitzpatrick. We knew about this story, and it always seemed, you would hear different rumors. You would hear terrible, awful things about it. You would hear he didn't do it. You would hear, he's just this big giant, like a nice guy. So it's something that I've known about for 30 years now, and has held my interest for 30 years. And I think that it will capture people's attention and
Absolutely.
hopefully do good things for you.
Does anybody have a question that they want to ask Rob tonight? It's all right. If you think of one, I do.
Yeah.
What, when you said that you grew up hearing he did it, he didn't do it, how much younger are you?
I'm I think 1 year younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you were really.
I mean, yeah, I was in high school with John Fitzpatrick while they were friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your interest?
It was a crazy story, right? I am 15 years old, basically just sort of encountering the world for the first time, and you hear the story of this kid my age who murdered his best friend's mother, and you obviously you're reading the stories in the news just like everyone else, and you think it's the worst. But then through the local grapevine, you would hear like, "There's no way."
Can you guys hear him? I don't know if you guys can hear him.
Yeah, if you know this kid, it doesn't make any sense, and that's been getting to know Eddie over the past like pretty much 2 years. That's been the thing that is kind of. There's a lot of strong arguments.
Oh yeah, right.
But the one to me is that I don't know too many people who snap at the age of 15, do something horrific like that, and then go on to just live the most productive life you could possibly live in prison.
Right.
It seems pretty that
doesn't really happen.
More than anything seems
Don't
fair.
add up. Don't add up.
And-
No.
Yeah.
I was in a bad place.
Yes.
Are you like
Hold on.
contacting like?
Wait, hold on. Can you guys hear back there?
Stuff like
All
that?
right. The question is, are you
Like,
contacting?
do you get any pushback?
Are you contacting attorneys' offices?
So basically,
The DA's office.
PAs?
at this point, we are trying to lay as low as possible and do this as low impact as possible.
Okay.
The idea being that the
It's a machine.
louder and the more out there I am, the more people put up their defenses, the
Right.
more people shut down, yada, yada. So this is with the cooperation of the O'Briens, of Margot, who has been just an absolutely
Yes.
invaluable
Yeah.
resource.
Let's clap for Mark. Yeah.
I imagine you've read the book at this point. If you haven't, buy a copy of it, get her to sign
That's
it.
the perfect time. Guys, Margot does have some copies of the book back there. There was a first edition. Even if you read the first edition, buy the second edition. All right, this is an updated.
Hundreds of extra pages. Hundreds of extra pages.
Yes, yes. It just came out. You'll be one of the first people to read it. It is jam-packed with information. So if there's anything you ever wondered, you're gonna get it from the person that was literally holding his hand through the trial. And not only that, but it brings awareness to it. Imagine if you're just out there reading it. You're reading your book, someone's like, what are you reading? Perfect time to talk about it. Time to get Eddie's story out. Buy Margot's book. She'll sign it for you tonight.
And I will say, as I was thinking about after their story was done and we finished shooting and we finished producing it and all that, and we're basically just trying to get it sold, I started thinking about what my next project would be. I thought of Eddie's story. I found the book. I read the book. that night I emailed Margot and was like, I need to talk to you. And that's really what got this whole thing going. And so I honestly, truly would, for a number of reasons, wouldn't be here without her help and support. But first and foremost was reading that book and contacting her and having her, lay out such an amazing case for, yeah, guys.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I just have a comment to make.
Sure.
I'm Eddie's cousin. Eddie's my second cousin. I love him to death. Love him all to death. The thing that pisses me off about the law, my question is like, not to you, but I think of it all the time. Why didn't they investigate that cab? Why didn't they look in that trunk of the cab? Which I believe there was major evidence in that trunk of the cab. What was that looking
Get the politics.
crime scene, looking for a key where he wasn't supposed to be?
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Pisses me off.
when I think about the case in general, and I think about what has happened, it starts in the investigation that night. I don't think, people ask me like, oh, so you think this is some crazy conspiracy theory? No, I think it was people who were laser focused. Sorry, I'm sore. Laser focused on a result, and they knew what result they wanted to get. And 1995, you would hear rumors of this stuff, and you would think that's crazy. Again, I almost swore. That's crazy. Like, what cops would do this? They're cops. Like, they're good guys. But like, the more these types of stories come out, the more and more you realize, like, not every cop is a good cop. Not every guy has like a pure heart and is going after the truth. They're going after a conviction, And so for me, it starts that night. If you see a sweaty guy walking around, flop sweat, where's my keys? Where's my keys? We should probably talk to that guy. And the fact that they don't is stunning. The fact that in the Boston Globe the next morning, he's quoted as, quote, Janet's brother-in-law who asks not to be named. Why? Why? Like, why didn't you give your name?
It's a lack of curiosity on the police's part.
Yeah. And so, and for that and hundreds and hundreds, and I was saying earlier to Karen, like, I made this almost a year ago, give or take, 6 months to a year ago. And I watched this is probably my no joke 1,000th time seeing it. But I haven't watched it in a few months, and going back and watching it again today, I was like, oh my God, like you forget all of the things that point to this not being what it appears to be.
And I think now's the actual perfect time for this to happen, because people are now aware that everything isn't always on the up and up.
Yeah.
Karen Reed case obviously opened up doors for that. There are other cases going on right now. We hear more about exonerees coming forward, being able to talk about it. And, Eddie's about to file his Rule 30. He's going to get, hopefully a new trial. We're going to get this out there. So now is the time to make a donation to help them fight it. Because if they had done the same exact thing 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the same result wouldn't happen. That would happen and can happen and will happen today. Accepting of it. Mm-hmm. And so we do have these around the room. This is a Cash App, a Venmo. You can scan it with your phones. Go ahead and donate. There are raffles over here. We're going to draw them relatively soon. So if you're interested in winning something, please purchase the raffle. raffle tickets over by the door, I believe. Are they still by the door?
Yeah.
Grab your last raffle tickets while we do the next part, because after that, we're gonna be drawing raffles. All of that money will go to fighting for justice, getting Eddie out. And that's what really matters. And truly thank you guys all for coming tonight, because we're all here for the same reason. And whether you know the family personally, or you've learned about them, you grew up with them, or you heard the story and you just know it's not right, we're all together. So it doesn't matter how you got here, we're thankful you are here. And the more of us that fight, the more.
And I would say,
Gotta get them out. Let's do it.
learning from Eddie,
Yeah.
from
Just 1
talking.
second, we just listened to them, we got about another 20 minutes, so. Please.
Well, one of the things that I have learned from Eddie about the process of appeals and stuff like that, yes, he has help from lawyers. That's great. There's a whole slew of other costs that are connected with this that like you just don't understand until I haven't gone through it, but I know someone who's going through it, and it's stunning. I mean, it's really, the costs that are associated with it are very high and daunting to think about as an individual having to deal with it. So
Something that experts is that you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But unless you have millions of dollars and you're up against the Commonwealth, who will literally throw all of their resources and more, you're starting below. You may be innocent until proven guilty, but you're already starting as the underdog. Because the Commonwealth is a mighty machine. And they will go to no ends to get what they want. They've proven it over and over again.
to protect their own interests, and that's why it's not there, but that's why we called it the Commonwealth versus Eddie O'Brien, because it is a massive machine with unlimited resources.
David and Goliath.
That is able to point those resources in any direction that they see fit to achieve a goal that they want. And I know that that sounds like crazy conspiracy, whatever, but they have vested interests in this and they don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to them. This is not their life. This is not their son. This is not their uncle. This is not their cousin. It's just someone who they can convict and who they can put behind bars and say, it's done. We're done. We did this. It's over. And so, it is a daunting hill to climb.
I always say this, when you think of the Karen retrial, which everybody is very familiar with, and that's why it's easy to use as an example, we're just, more and more is coming out about the police. We're learning about the police. That's on this level. But when you talk about the Eddie O'Brien case, you're talking about the DA, the governor, and beyond. And so that is a much higher level, which will require much more, which we're all ready for. We're going to do it. 31 years. Right. Far too long. It's 31 overdone years. He deserves to be out. You all know that. We know that. And that's why we're all here together. Next up, guys, don't forget the raffles. Don't forget the books. And there are t-shirts as well. Next up, I'm going to bring Mikey from YouTube's Can We Keep It Real? Yeah. Mikey is going to take us through the evidence, all the stuff that you have ever wanted to know. This is the man that can break it down for all of us to understand.
I'm gonna try.
You got it.
When I first heard Eddie's story, you kind of hear, I'm innocent, and where I come from, everybody said they were innocent at a certain point, but I've been around the block a few times, so when I heard Eddie's story, you think about a kid like Eddie O'Brien, 15 years old, coming from a good family like, Ed and Trisha and everybody that I met so far with in the O'Brien family. I mean, this one just hits different. This one, I think the first time I even heard Eddie speak, he actually said something that kind of stuck with me. He said, look at the evidence, look at the evidence and it basically speaks for itself. And that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I needed my phone. I'm a little nervous talking front of big crowds. Yeah.
You're good. You're good.
You know, he said something that really stopped me in my tracks, you know. He said, go over the evidence and you will see the truth. And he didn't say, believe me. He didn't say, you know, take my word for it. He said, look at the evidence, because the evidence right there, the real evidence, I think it tells a story, you know, that happened 31 years ago. So when I did look at the evidence, what I found a 15-year-old kid who had good working values, you know, who had a job at 15 years old. Even in 95, that was odd. You know, I found a kid that goes to church, that hangs out with his friends, that cares about people. You know, I also found witnesses who place him right there. Now you got to remember that 820 timeline, you know, that witnesses that place him on the porch with his parents, you know, so it just, none of it made sense. So, you know, that's when I had to, you know, do a deep dive and start reading. I went to the truthabouteddieobrien.com website, and I tell, like, everybody should go to that website, because all the evidence on there is the state's own evidence in there, black and white. From the DNA testing that excluded Eddie, you know, like, how do you have Eddie's DNA is not on Janet? You know, Eddie's DNA is not on the murder weapon. How? You know, in 95, maybe we didn't understand it, but in 2026, I think we kind of have an idea. And then you look at the serology testing, which I think is real big. The serology, the blood didn't even match Eddie, and the crime lab actually said, you know, it matches people that were related to Janet. You know, and if you look at the serology notes, and if you look at the actual final report, it's totally different. The final report don't say what the actual notes say. That basically they also excluded Eddie. So how does a jury convict a kid when there's no DNA? You know, the blood work, you know, Janet had AB blood. You know, the blood that they found there was A, B. So what they did to make it look slick is they just took the comma away and made it look like Eddie was mixed with Janet's. So, you know, after 31 years, you know, I don't know how none of this has been brought up yet, or, I mean, you are going against a machine, you know, but his daughter is the chief justice of the court system, you know, so it's going to take a lot of people. It's going to take everyone getting together, you know, and it's going to take money. It's going to take a lot of money, you know, for a lot of experts. So, you know, buy these books, help, you know, support Margot. There's, you know, different ways that we can all raise money, come together. I used to do a podcast. I still do it, but I got back into it because of Eddie's case. You know, and I got to say, I first heard about the case on the JFK show. And, you know, and I only bring that up because I want to let people know where I heard about the Eddie O'Brien case. You know what I mean? And I thank him for that, because it brought me to see the light, you know, like what really goes on. And then you start digging deeper. And there was a lot of unsolved murders that happened in the Somerville, Cambridge area that were never solved. I think 7 under Riley's watch. But he wanted to focus on Janet, you know, I guess the other 7 people didn't deserve Riley's attention. But, you know, when you look at the DNA, and I'm not a scientist, but I learned how to read them DNA reports. Now there's 3 columns, and they needed to get the number 12, and you can't take from one column and put in the other, which Riley did. Riley said, well, there's a 12 here, so like you heard on the doc, that must be Eddie O'Brien's. But it's just impossible. It's impossible to do that. You know, this case has so many twists. There's so many twists and turns. You know, the Commonwealth hoped that nobody would ever get this close to this case, and they almost got away with it. You know, poor Gina. For years, for years, she said, I just want to throw snowballs at Eddie. I just want to play, you know, let him down with the hose. They won't listen to Gina because what Gina has to say, you know, it don't agree with what Riley has to say about Eddie. And what Virginia Reckley said, that didn't match their report. So we have to get together, free Eddie, you know what I mean? Do whatever we got to do. This poor guy has anxiety all the time. I try to not bother him. You know, he has a great family from, you know, the wife, the Aunt Jerry, you know, great people, you know, so many great people. Karen here doing what she's doing. I mean, I've been driving myself nuts, digging in law books, trying to read the case. I mean, if you watch my podcast, it's a little more put together than what I'm saying now.
What's the name of your podcast?
Can we keep it real, you know?
One word. Say it,
One
keep
word.
it real. Say it.
Word. Can we keep it real? There's great people around Eddie. Eddie's a nice guy. And let's talk about this. They said Eddie is a psychopath. You know, Eddie's nuts. Eddie has 7 disciplinary infractions in prison in 31 years. I had 7 in a week. You know?
It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
You know, 7 in 31 years is like almost nothing. Like Eddie does so much to Eddie. Riley thought by putting Eddie in prison, it was going to break Eddie. It was going to tear him down. You put him in Walpole State Prison with Massachusetts' most hottest criminals. Breaks them down. And what did Eddie do? Eddie made prison better. He made prison better for a lot of people. He made prison better for other inmates. You know, he's self-taught. But Eddie don't know what it's like to be an adult in the real world.
Right.
Like we all do. Get up, go to work.
They took it away.
They definitely took it away. He's a big boy, you know, they stole it from him.
Yeah.
So even when Eddie does come out, you know, and he's gonna need all our help.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, free Eddie, man. You know, if anyone has any questions, I'll be over here. I'll be here for the night. Take it away.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mikey. Good job.
You know, he brought up a really good point that you got to think about it. So this last week, I've been at the Lindsay Clancy trial. I was driving down Sunday night and Eddie called. He said, I knew you're driving down, so I got to check on you about this, right? And I said, I'm going to Massachusetts. Can you believe it's my first time sleeping in a hotel by myself? And he's like, can you believe I've never done that either? And I was like, but you know, like, think about that. Yeah. You have to think about all the things he has license. He didn't go to prom. He never rode a bike. He's never slept in a hotel by himself. He's never had a quiet night. And that was like, that really struck me. I'm driving down and I'm thinking like, I've had plenty of opportunity, but he never has. No. He has missed out on so many things. While on the flip side, taking that time that was stolen from him, staying so positive, making such a difference. You know, I've met a lot of people in my life and I was a police officer, I was a dispatcher, and with all honesty, I have never met anybody like Eddie O'Brien. I never have. I've never met anybody who has faced time after time the adversity and the just bam, like all the bombs that just kept coming his way. And yet he still laughs, he still smiles, he still does so many good things for people. He is so humble. When he comes out, he's going to continue to make such a difference. You guys made a really good kid. You did. You really did. Because I don't know anyone else. I don't know anybody else that would have been able to face what he's faced and still be who he is today.
Absolutely.
Amen. So that's another reason, guys. We need more good people on this side, trust me, right? So please consider giving And then also just talk about it. Because, you know, it's been quiet for so long, but when I heard about the case, Scott taught me, you know, he had been watching JFK and he said, hey, check out this case. And we're all honest here. I literally go, oh, it's just some, first I go, kid from Massachusetts. All right. And I didn't think about it for a little bit. And then one day I just was like, kid, 15, Massachusetts? And I start like really digging into it. And I'm going, that's no. Okay, like this doesn't happen. This is a movie. Okay, if you brought this to a producer and said, make this movie, they'd be like, guys, that's not gonna, no one's gonna believe that. That's not real. Okay, that's not gonna pass as reality. And I just kept looking, and you know, what really got me wanting to continue is not only is Eddie amazing and his family's amazing, but when I realized that my own mother was one of the 10 people who, and I love my mom, and she is an amazing woman. Let me preface this. My mother was a police officer. She was a detective in Maine. And there were 10 people appointed in Washington, D.C. to the Juvenile Justice Committee in 1995. And that year, they all got together to talk about super predators with Janet Reno, Bill Clinton, and those 10 people sat in a room, a little bit smaller than this, and they started going through all the things to make the laws that put Eddie in jail for the rest of his life. And when I told Eddie that, he's like, that's a weird coincidence. And I said, there's no such thing as coincidence, Eddie. And that's why I'm actually not going to stop until you're out. And my mother, oh, God bless her, she's like, oh my God, like, it was a
God damn, now we got it. When that super predator shit all first started, John DeLulio, who basically claimed that like a new generation of these kids, right? A lot of them are, you know, black and brown kids, you know, from the inner cities. They were gonna grow up morally impoverished, they were gonna grow up fatherless, remorseless, and they were gonna commit these violent crimes. And at these crazy, crazy rates, it was like a wave of juvenile violence. He said as young as like 10, 14 years old, they were going to start invading our community, and the crime explosion rate was going to go crazy. And what the super predator theory basically said, that some kids are just beyond rehabilitation. Some kids just can't be helped. They're beyond remorse. They are incapable of remorse, that these kids need adult punishments. They don't need juvenile treatment centers. And he said society should be so afraid of these kids. Be afraid of them. Don't help them. And this shit wasn't scientific. This was man-made. It was fear marketing. They were just playing off people's fears and emotion. And it worked, because not only people started buying this bullshit, it became law. You had juvenile life without parole. You know that we were the only country, check this out, the only country that gave life without parole to minors. That's right, the United States of America. Imagine that, the only shitty ass country that gave life without parole to minors. And then you had mandatory minimums for kids. You had transfer laws, kids sent to adult courts. That's some bullshit. No tolerance school policies. There's a whole new thing called the school to prison pipeline, and it's a real friggin' thing. Kids get in trouble in school. Oh, I gotta get on, go get it. You have it? No. Oh, all right. I gotta run to the store and get change. I have no cash at all. All right, let me finish this up. You had mass incarceration of minors. States across the country, they changed laws to make it easier to try kids as adults. And mass, it is real, absolutely, the school to prison pipeline. Absolutely. I witnessed it myself where they would rather arrest a kid for shit that we would have done in school all the time. Horseplay, and they call it disturbing an assembly. But this is the climate that Eddie was sentenced in, and why it was wrong. And I'll finish this up now, because juvenile crime did not explode. Juvenile crime dropped throughout the 90s and 2000s, and it was neuroscience that proved kids are not mini adults. Go ask Michaela if I could borrow it. That's going to be tough. You know what I mean? But the prefrontal cortex, right? The decision-making, impulse control in these kids, it's not developed until at least 25, 27. I don't think I started maturing until I was 27 years old. And they said that they're highly capable. They cannot be rehabilitated. And that's what happened. And their theory was effing wrong. Their theory, they were drunk. They were off their rocker. Their model was mathematically wrong. Their model was consciously wrong. It was politically motivated. And it caused so much damage, right, that it justified these harsh sentences for a lot of these kids. Racial profiling started going through the roof, right? Increased incarceration. Look, your boy's working. I'm over here sweating my ass off over here, people. Look at me. I am working. He's working too. I am definitely working. For a lot of these kids, the fear outweighed the facts. Yeah, I didn't even know that, blocking my face all this time. But the fear outweighed the facts. The science was ignored. I am sweating my butt off. The rehabilitation just was dismissed, and prosecutors were rewarded for being tough on crime. And at the whole time, the system was asking what actually happened and who can make the public feel safe. And then not too long later, courts ended up reversing this bullshit. That juveniles are constitutionally different. Life without parole for kids is cruel and unusual. These kids deserve individualized sentencing. Not every case is the same. We can go to court. Me and you can have the same friggin' charge. You know what I mean? And that shit is not the same. You know what I mean? Massachusetts ended up following suit. They ended up banning, juvenile life without parole entirely. Well, about time. Which you should have never fucking had it to begin with. The law changed because the science proved panic was fiction, right? And that super predator myth was one of the biggest bullshit failures in American criminal justice. It wasn't science. It was just making people afraid. You know, it was just straight politics and kids like Eddie O'Brien. And it didn't stop with kids. It didn't stop at juveniles. In the 90s, everybody was being locked up. Whoever it was. But people like Eddie O'Brien paid the price for a theory that turned out to be completely false. You know, that turned out to be wrong. A man-made theory. You know, and a lot of theories, a lot of shit that's man-made turns out to be false. A lot of juries turn out to be false. You know? I mean, how could you really even trust a jury? You know? Are you better off going with a judge trial? With a bench trial? These are questions that people need to ask. And this is why 90-something% of cases, people end up plea bargaining. People end up taking a deal. But imagine if everybody just said, screw this shit. We're not taking a deal. We're going to take it to trial. Shit, you would cripple the justice system. You would cripple it. You know, but when politicians and the media back in, 1995 to 2000 started saying there was a new breed of juvenile criminals is coming, oh, people got nervous. The kids are taking over. They're out of control. They're crazy. They're beyond help. We can't help these friggin' kids. Throw them away. Send them to Walpole. We can close these youth facilities. Kids as young as 10 to 14 will commit these crimes at skyrocketing rates. We must treat the children like adults in court. Harsh punishments is the only solution. What did this lead to? What did this lead to? What did this help? You know, what did it lead to? It led to these friggin', being the only country in the only country in the world that would give life without parole to juveniles. What the frig does that tell you? Automatic transfers to adult court. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Stand-up judges like Heffernan was being sidelined, taken off the case. Heffernan said Eddie O'Brien should be tried in juvenile court. Oh, yeah? Well, guess what? Now we're taking your ass off the case. You should have changed your mind, boy. That's what they told him. The shit going on in the schools is off the hook. Pay attention, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. Who is your kid around 8 hours a day? Do you know who's in them classrooms? Respectfully, not all teachers are weirdos. I'm just saying, but there are a few. There are a few. But thinking that kids are mini adults with adult criminal intent, throwing a kid in Walpole, what, adult crimes, adult time? That wasn't no friggin' way to work this shit out. What kind of shit is that? Even if he was covering, he's still capable of the crime. Yep, because they do what they very well want. And you know something that's friggin' crazy? The juvenile crime didn't even explode. Juvenile crime didn't even go crazy.
It's a different time. Her views have changed. She's also on the side of no kid like Eddie should ever be in jail for the rest of his life. That's not It's cruel and unusual punishment is what it actually is. So everybody come together and please consider giving tonight. Please talk about this case. Continue to talk about this case. And we're not going to stop until we're all in a room with Eddie. And he's here with us.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right?
And where's Jojo? Jojo said everybody in the room, he's gonna pay for Capital Growth. Yes.
Whoa, Jojo said that.
All right, hey, Jojo. You said up to 100. Long time.
He said, catch me like the gingerbread man.
Start running. Has everybody done the raffles? Have you bought your tickets? Have you put them in the baskets?
So,
All right,
yeah,
you
that
guys
was
have
about
the
it. And
tickets.
then they ended up doing the raffles, but
Anybody
it was a
else?
very good event.
If there is anybody else, last call.
You know, it was a very, very friendly event. You know, I figured we would replay that. I believe Eddie was threatened in that house that night. Get out of here. If you say a word, I'll slaughter you and your entire fam. A 15-year-old hears that threat with literal absolute certainty, believing it. Absolutely. And at that point, Eddie felt he was responsible probably for protecting his family. Like, shit, if I say something, I'm screwed. You know, and back then with teenagers being more impulsive, more emotional, more influenced by peers. I mean, these kids have a high rehabilitation potential because their brains are still developed, you know, and the crime didn't go anywhere. You know, and then if you look at the side-by-side analysis, they had like the super predator myth versus the actual science, you know, and they said that kids are remorseless predators. Kids are remorseless predators, but the real science says kids have underdeveloped impulse controls, not that they're remorseless predators. You know, the super predator myth will tell you that juvenile crime will explode. But what the actual science showed you was that juvenile crime fell nationwide. The super predator myth will tell you that children must be punished like adults. Adult crime for adult crime, adult time. But the actual science tells you what? That children's brains are still developing, right? So some kids, you know, some kids are beyond rehabilitation if you listen to the super predator myth of 1995-96. But what's the actual science show you? That adolescents have high rehabilitation potential, that they can be rehabilitated, that there is a chance for them. You know? I mean, we know that happened. You know, and the super predator myth led so many juveniles to life without parole. And then the courts later ruled that juvenile life without parole is unconstitutional. You people stick with me and will give me a minute.
tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with will, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne Bud, a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth. Built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was a stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink indeed, Betty's pain paid through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part. But the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be free. Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right you see. Can we keep it real, Thomas? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light.
All right then. All right then. Well, I appreciate everybody. But today we went through, we watched the fundraising event, great event, we know there was handwritten notes from the district attorney, all that shit, we know Eddie was screwed over, bottom line. And hopefully when this finally goes to court, we get the right judge, we get an honest judge. That's all, not the right judge, an honest judge, a good judge, someone that's going to look at the evidence, someone that's going to look at the science, because we know that this science told a different story. But Eddie never got that benefit. He never got the benefit of the truth. He was tried as a symbol. He wasn't tried as a child, and for 30 years, it's been a long, drawn-out experience for the whole family. So right here is a QR code. If you want to support the Eddie O'Brien, the Route 30 motion, you can donate right there. You can click that QR code, take a picture of it, and it'll direct you to the right place to make that donation. I mean, this isn't about, I don't think, declaring innocent or guilt, That's for the courts, right? That's for the courts to do. I think this is about just acknowledging that you guys got it wrong and there was a cost for it. And the cost was bullshit. The kid paid 30 years of his life, and put up an argument. Tell me why he was guilty, but nobody can. Nobody can, man. I appreciate y'all. I'm out of here. Much love. Don't forget, if you appreciate the stream, you can send a super chat. Really appreciate it. You can gift some memberships, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, all that good stuff. If you want to Venmo me, you can Venmo me at Can We Keep It Real? One word. Cash App at Can We Keep It Real? Ding, ding, ding. you know, but we gotta be willing to revisit these cases, you know, and talk about things that are uncomfortable for some people, you know, to get the truth out. Yeah, maybe one day we'll talk about that school to prison pipeline, man. That's a subject that I really like to get into. But until then, man, we out of here. Talk to y'all later. Peace.
Eddie O'Brien, oh, what a story to tell. 15 years young, caught in a prison cell. Trapped in the system, ain't that just a shame? For a crime he didn't do, they played him like a game. Pattern so clear, yet nobody sees. Intentional lies blowing in the breeze. Documented truths, but they're buried so deep. Poor kid lost his life while the system's asleep. Free Eddie, free until it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. The man couldn't keep his own story straight. Taking a kid's future, ain't that real fate? Welcome back, chat got us talking hood-wise. Dark humor and metaphors disguised in the cries. Sir, hypothetically, in a murder case, ain't it funny how a fool runs this rat race? Growth don't happen in the middle of this mess. Step back, breathe, man, just let go of the stress. Free Eddie, free until it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. See, you gotta let the clowns believe they succeeded. You didn't fold a break, you just got what you needed. Took it to the chin, not the heart, you see. Don't let the chaos take space in your melody. You're built different, like a lesson they missed. Teaching them boundaries, couldn't find them on a list. Drowning in a puddle, they dragged you below. But now you let them flounder, cause they reap what they sow. So here's to Eddie, justice long overdue. Fighting for the truth like we all have to do. Step back from the noise, watch him throw a fit. Free Eddie O'Brien, let's never forget this. Eddie O'Brien, oh, what a story to tell. Fighting for his life in this unjust hell. Till it's backward, guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes.